Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Take the Hill, which is a leadership podcast designed to connect you with influential leaders exhibiting great leadership within their respective fields. So good morning and welcome back, Dennis and Angelo.
Hey, Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm well, very well.
Good
Angelo.
morning, everybody. It is good to be here.
Nice. Always glad to have you here as well, Angelo. So today we are super excited to have a really special guest with us, and it is the owner of Rolling Pepperoni, which is not just about delicious fare, which we will learn about very shortly, but it is also about the preservation and celebration of the Appalachian culture. All right, so this episode today, you are going to have the chance to meet Katt Schuler, who owns Rolling Pepperoni, where she's doing tremendous work in the Lawrenceville area, which is really bridging urban and rural communities. The idea for Rolling Pepperoni came from a project and just thinking about it as well. She was an undergrad at Point Park University. And the motivation really came from what I believe is an alternative business model that kind of extended beyond, the for-profit idea. It's really a socially driven, mission, centered business. And we are super excited this morning to say, Katt, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you here. And so for our listeners, can you kind of give us a little bit of background on kind of your journey to kind of coming up with this idea to create this business?
Sure. Well, okay, so I'm from West Virginia, and so is the pepperoni roll. Those are two important pieces of the puzzle. I'm from West Virginia and transferred to Point Park halfway through my college career. The first half of my college career being rather dismal, and then the second half of my college career being far more interesting and exciting and inspirational. During this transition, I was very much involved in kind of community service work. I was very, I had come from studying psychology as a background, and I had worked as a social worker. I was just very invested in community work and taking care of, my fellow human. And I transferred to Point Park kind of on a whim at the plea of my mother. She just had an inkling that Pittsburgh would be good for me, and she was right. And during the transition to Pittsburgh, it was full of creativity. And creativity in a really empowered way, where I was in class and I would get to do really a full-fledged project on what I would want an event to look like, or how I would work out a promotion for a business down the street. And this transition from kind of thinking about creativity in a very empowered way really struck me and surprised me that I never experienced it before moving to Pittsburgh, moving into a more urban area. And so I started to question, why not? Where had that been? And it led me down a rabbit hole of serving pepperoni rolls and talking about the Appalachian culture, which is normally referred to as West Virginia. When we talk about Appalachia, we often think of Central Appalachia, which is predominantly West Virginia. West Virginia is the only state that is entirely in Appalachia, where other states have counties that are part of Appalachia and then it ebbs out. So when I make the pepperoni roll, it's to kind of talk about where it comes from, but also talk about where we are now, which is also Appalachia.
You're muted, Patrick.
We'll edit that out. So tell me about that transition, because again, like you said, it, through maybe the guidance of your mother and kind of some of the things that you'd experienced along the way, what gave you the courage to make that jump from some place that's kind of really rural to, this urban environment? Was that something that was kind of scary for you to do, or what lessons did you learn along the way?
Man, it was horrifying. It was terrible. What was the most remarkable thing is growing up in a rural community. you don't realize how quaint your understanding of the world is. You know, you don't know all the things that you're missing, and how fast being in a city is. And Pittsburgh is slow for a city, you know, it's small, and it was still such a shock. And experiencing that shock was shocking. You know, it was doubly confusing. And I think Pittsburgh, I think why it's so relevant is because Pittsburgh is also rural. You know, it's very hilly, it's mountainous, the rivers are here, but we still have this density of people. So it's in landscape feels very much like Appalachia. It doesn't look or isn't that far removed from rural communities, but the experience, the traffic, the parking, the density of people, and the opportunities for community exchanges, you know, that is very, very prevalent.
Hey, Katt, I had a question, and every time we do a podcast, this word comes out for me, intrigued. I'm really intrigued with your the word creativity. And the reason why I am, because you get into most business, people are starting businesses or even are in business and maybe need to restructure or whatever. That creativity seems to be a stumbling point, which sounds like it was it helped you take off. So have you always been a creative person, or is this something, I mean, how do you, it can be scary being creative. Like, wow, I'm going to do this. Like Patrick and I starting this, we were trying to be creative and it was kind of scary. So have you always been creative? And what advice would you give other managers that need to become more creative?
Oh, well, the creativity is definitely something that I feel like you must understand. It's something that lives within you. And I think if you know, need to find more creativity, you have to learn to trust yourself more. You know, it is very scary, and it is playing the long game. You know, in the business model, we, you know, not just pay for the cost of the production of the pepperoni roll, we pay writers and for the cost of the stories that associate with our, you know, associate our mission. But, and you know, that's really quite a large expense. And sometimes you think, is it necessary? You know, if I stopped putting the dollars towards the creativity, what would happen? Would the business be as successful? No, not a long shot. Of course not. You know, the creativity is the heartbeat. It lets you, you know, it lets me have more fun. The creativity is what fuels me and drives me to get up every morning and return to this work. Without it, it would be so monotonous. But the creativity it's like magic, you know?
And I love that message, that because again, a lot of individuals I think get into business because they're like, oh, I can make a lot of money. And that's maybe great over the short term, but as you kind of demonstrated and said very eloquently, that again, over the long term, I mean, if there's not a passion or creativeness or a drive there that's inside of you, you're going to kind of get bored and you're not really going to keep pushing forward. So can you talk a little bit about those stories? Because again, they're on your wrappers. They're part of the new book, which I hope we're going to talk about here soon. Like how does that combine with the food and the environment that you're building in this company?
Oh, well, it all combines, I think. I hope to combine all of the creativity in a way that communicates permission for people to enjoy the creativity and to experience it hands-on, permission to be curious, permission to, you know, putting the stories on the wrappers is pretty peculiar. And I hope individuals find themselves with a pepperoni roll and think, what is this? Why is this here? What are these words? Who are these people? And it just prompts sort of a creativity and, to be curious about these individuals. What the stories focus is, the stories focus around kind of urban poor disparities. And it's not a lot of fun to talk about. So by kind of, we want to eradicate poverty, right? That's sort of what we think about. But you can't just, there's no clear way to that solution. There's no, I think they're called, a wicked problem, because there's no solution. All solutions, if you're following a linear model with an A, B, and C, you can't get to where you want to go without introducing something that's also a negative. But you can prompt people to start thinking and talking about it. And the more people think about it, and the more people feel comfortable to think through a problem and begin to think through what a solution might look like, is where I hope the stories lead individuals. When we started the story project 5 years ago, the conversation, we were in a vacuum. There was no one talking about Appalachia. There was no one talking about rural poverty. Now, so many people. We are one of many. And whether we all came into this realization at the same time, or whether all of our little, the language happening out in the ether on the internet fueled all of our kind of conviction to stand on our own, because there were other people quietly doing the same thing. And now being together, it's interesting to see where the conversation will go next.
Katt, I'm impressed with kind of the diversity of your approach here, right? Like, you're taking on a lot of different goals, initiatives, endeavors with kind of one overarching model, which I think is really cool. It also, I wonder how you wear so many hats though. Like, I feel tired, like, for you. Like, it seems like you are doing a lot, and that's not even talking about the environment that you're doing it in currently, right? So, I mean, how do you wear so many hats with this endeavor and not wear yourself too thin? Or what kind of delegation does exist within this sphere that you've created?
Oh, well, yes, delegation. I have really, really smart people that I work with. So that is key. The community and everyone I work with, how smart and how hardworking everyone is, that's everything. But it happened very naturally for all of us to come together through kind of the community-driven approach. My very first employee she's now the community engagement manager, but she started as a story coordinator. And she found me because she was putting together a puppet show about Appalachian women and their fight against mountaintop removal. And she walked past my sign at my bakery where it says Pittsburgh, Appalachia. And I think that just goes to show that, it is a slow and steadfast approach to your goal in business, and the right people just show up. When you put your heart first, the right people just show up, and you trust each other, and you can be honest. And I think, in leadership, yes, the first person is important, but really, the second person is the most important. And the first person is just crazy, but the second person lifts that first individual and turns it into a movement, right? We did talk about that as part of the function of an idea catching and taking shape. And it took a while. It took a while, and it was a lot of work. But the delegation is important, and trusting them. So I don't do their jobs at all. If someone doesn't know, I say, just go for it. Do whatever you want. We're all making this up as we go. And sometimes the outcome is way different than I thought it was going to be, but I think that's for the best as we think about having a more diverse approach to everything we do.
And I think this message and what you're saying, Katt, is I wish I could kind of bottle this up and show this to all of our students, because even though it does take a lot of courage to kind of go out on your own and start something that's never been done before, especially in a environment where, as you said, it's not happening, right? Or maybe it's happening, but nobody knows each other are doing these things. What have you learned about yourself over this journey?
Oh, what have I learned about myself? I don't know. That yoga and meditating are very important. They've become key to my happiness and to my ability to continue. The taking care of myself is the most important thing I can do every day. If my body doesn't feel well because we're baking, if my mind is foggy because we're creating stories and content, just taking care of myself. I think at the beginning of this endeavor, I would wear myself ragged. I just didn't care. I was also a lot younger, so I had a lot more energy and could do more than I can do in some ways now. But I just try to really take care of myself in a way that I didn't make time for before. And it helps me to not feel so overwhelmed by all of the things that have to happen every day, because there are a lot of hats. There's a lot of different things competing for all of our attention. And when I take time to do yoga, it helps me to move through kind of unstirred.
Yeah, I can relate to that getting older thing, but we won't talk about that.
I thought you were gonna talk about your yoga stuff, Dennis.
Oh, I could. I got pictures. But anyway,
It's okay.
I guess I really, this is really cliche, I guess, but you make it sound, it takes a village to make your business work. And, that's fantastic. And I'm and again, I don't have all the details, but Patrick was sharing with me that you have opened up another part of the store where people come in, they communicate, they congregate and have fun. I don't know every aspect of it, but I got to ask you, how do you feel you've impacted your community?
Oh, I think positively. I think I've impacted, I think, oh gosh, that's a really tough question.
I'm sorry, I can make it easier. Let me think. How do you think you've impacted the community? No, I'm sorry.
No, okay, so I would say that I hope as a woman, certainly, I've impacted women to be themselves in business. I think what is the hardest for women in business is that business is, created by men, and that's great, but it really is a function of, a specific goal mindset, a specific way to organize and structure life to feel positive about, the outcome of the day. And I think women can operate in a different way. We can maybe flow between one thing and another. And I think I hope that as a woman in business, I make space to be quirky and to be unsure and to ask questions. And I think that it's a healthy way to conduct business, and it can feel like you're doing things wrong, but I think it is, we're still waiting for our first female president. As as a woman putting yourself in a leadership position, it feels like we're all making way for hopefully our first, woman president. And by just showing up and doing whatever we do and the way we do it as weird or as not weird as we want.
I
know
love
Patrick
it.
wants.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I know you want to start to transition soon to the topic of the book, which I also want to, but I have slightly been looking at your website while this discussion's been going on. I'm like, these options to purchase are really incredible. I'm vegetarian, so first of all, I just love that there's a focus there as well. So kudos to that. What is your favorite on the menu? I mean, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but looking at this right now, I feel like Dennis. I feel like I understand his perspective here about the food and the stomach grumbling. I see it now. What is your favorite on this menu? I got to know.
The Monongahela.
Without hesitation, you just went straight.
Without hesitation.
Chopped Greek olive blend, garlic, roasted red peppers, mozzarella cheese, and pepperoni. Pepperoni with mozzarella and provolone. Beautiful. Oh my God, the picture looks amazing. There's even more. Naturally yeasted handmade dough made with olive oil and local Pittsburgh honey. Naturally dairy-free if ordered without cheese. Amazing.
Hey, Angelo, I'll pick you up on the way down. Okay?
Let's do it.
I'll meet you somewhere.
Well, I think creating pepperoni rolls that are very unconventional is also a piece of the puzzle too. Before, pepperoni rolls were kind of like gas station food, trash food, but really it's just bread and cured meat. I mean, it's the basis of a beautiful charcuterie board. And to make a pepperoni roll with some class, some olives.
The menu is very impressive. I mean, I assume from the conversation that there would be this creative flow to it, right? As we've been discussing the create. And Patrick, I think, are you eating one right now?
I was just going to say, we'll have to ask the questions now because Patrick's mouth's full. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I just, again, we get back to that word of creativity. I mean, you're being creative in your product. You're being creative in how you're getting your message out there. You're being creative with including the community. Again, I can't stress how important that creativity is, and how you've used it to your advantage, and how you've used it in a way that's that could be an example to others. And again, I appreciate that. Again, the Pittsburgh area needs some help moving forward here in the future on how to overcome, these troubled times. Not only that, even after, Pittsburgh just needs some help. And I think you've set the path, opened up the door for others and other women, business women to follow that. But anyway, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to when I can get my wife and we can drive down to the shop and
yes,
just enjoy it.
So speaking of that, Katt, right now I'm eating just a traditional pepperoni and cheese, and I will say they are delicious. And I know I kind of held out and didn't give any to my colleagues because I was a little selfish in that regard. But what is your biggest seller right now? What do people order the most of out of that amazing selection?
The pepperoni and cheese. So everything is just like dressing on the cake. Everyone comes in for the pepperoni and cheese, but we do a buy three, get one deal. So as part of the regenerative business model, I've priced every single roll the exact same price. So there's no loss for anyone to try any of the obscure options. We have an option with pickles, and I think that is the one that really throws people. They're like, what? That's crazy. But it's not. It's very familiar in its flavor profile.
You charge the same amount for the Monongahela as you do the pepperoni roll and cheese.
Yes.
That is an incredible approach.
Yeah, so it's actually a loss if you don't get what. Yeah, right.
I feel
incredible. I'm like blown away by that approach right now. I love it. You make it so accessible.
It's so nice. I love it.
Just for our listeners, I think we should mention that the Rolling Pepperoni is on Butler Street in Pittsburgh, again in Lawrenceville, I believe, right? Am I correct? You don't mind if we give an address, do you?
No, I mean, we're here.
Our listeners there's stuff probably running down the corners of their mouth right now, watching Patrick eat that, because he is like that. But 6140 Butler Street. It's Rolling Pepperoni in Pittsburgh, PA. So I just wanted to share that with our listeners because I think it's important. We're talking about how great they are. We just want to let them know how to get there too.
Yeah, and if you can't go to the shop, I know, like you said, the online website is also very easy to navigate and get your order in as well. So we know what's in the store, right? We've heard a little bit of the passion. Can you talk to us about the book, right? Because this, I think we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, that it's almost ready to go.
So the book is the culmination of, creativity to the utmost degree. So throughout in the late 2018, we started asking people, okay, so sorry, let me dial it back one more notch. Appalachia is a sociologically defined culture. So when we wanted to start talking about Appalachia, in fact, you just have to ask people, because being a socially defined culture, it is what people say it is. So we were like, gosh, all right, well, what do people say it is? And I thought people would say like mountains and butterflies, good times and canoes. Nobody said that. People had very prolific answers. Every single person, really beautiful, full of sadness, full of hope. Many of them would make you cry. I mean, they are just, there was so much passion, every single answer, every single person. And we were just shocked time and time again that people returned with such passion in their answer. So in, kind of following the regenerative business model that's also very focused on transparency, we just compiled them all into one book so everyone can see the information that we learned, but also to see what we've been up to. As we say, we're here, we're talking about Appalachia, but, what have we been doing? Who have we been talking to? And we talked to 23, there's 23 people, 20 stories, and 7 different Appalachian states represented. And they all have this beautiful tone. They're all full of hope, full of sadness. And we did a word count at the end of all the words. And of course, the word used the most is people, which isn't surprising, being a socially defined culture, that the number one word used to describe Appalachia would be people.
What is one story that stands out the most for you in the book? I know it would probably be very hard to do.
No, there's 2. There's one story from an artist, and she's from my hometown, and she was one of our first stories, and she used this term. She said, we're in this epic battle of creation and destruction in Appalachia. And I thought, what? Gosh, you're right. I feel that same way too. And I think that's the other important aspect of the book, is that many people shared their story with us because they feel a frustration about rural poverty. And what is significant about this book is that each of our frustrations is not a silo experience. There are so many people that feel this way, and it impacts them powerfully. You know, it's not, nobody had an answer to the question, what is Appalachia, that was meaningless to them. It never didn't matter. And when she said that, that meant a lot to me. And there was another story by a musician in Kentucky, and he talked about his was the saddest. It was just the most heartbreaking. And he comes from one of the poorest counties in Kentucky. And, you know, a place where they're struggling to access clean drinking water right now, today. Like, you know, and of course, when we talk about what is Appalachia, his answer does not involve good times and canoes. It really is a heart-wrenching topic. And it was also confusing because this sadness expressed, we thought, wow, well, we can't print this on a pepperoni roll wrapper. That's kind of intense. But we went to an event called the Appalachian Food Summit. And again, the idea of Appalachia being a socially defined culture and putting the weight of the words on each individual, that we thought, well, who are we to censor their answers? Who are we to remove this information from, you know, the audience it was intended to be shared with? So they all went out on pepperoni roll wrappers, and hopefully they're not as sad in the future. Maybe they won't be. The conversation doesn't feel as sad as it used to.
Yeah, but I think, you know, I think what you're illuminating, and we run into it, I think, on, you know, this podcast as well, because we do meet with, like you said, a range of individuals. But I mean, it's kind of the lived human experience, right? And you're talking about whether it's leadership or management or organizations, like we're all a collection of human beings, right? And we bring those emotions and those experiences and perspectives to the table. And as you said, I think some of those conversations carry a lot of weight. All right. I mean, especially given everything that we're kind of dealing with, you know, in society right now. So, I mean, kudos to you for putting them on the labels, because as you said, I mean, that's their experience. I mean, that's their reality right now. So that's what we should be sharing, right? Because that's one element of that culture, right? Because as you said, it's not always canoes and rainbows and butterflies, right? There's darker sides sometimes. That's equal component of that culture, right? So, and collectively, that's what needs to be illuminated. So, you know, I think that was a valuable decision, and I think that's what makes your product and your book and what you're doing so incredibly important, because again, that's your vision and that's your mission, and you're staying true to that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So getting back to the food a little bit, is there ever, like, what comes next, like in terms of the pepperoni roll? I mean, is there ever going to be a time where I can walk in and maybe create my own pepperoni roll? Or like, how do you go through a creative process there to find new flavors or new combinations, but yet still stay true to Appalachia?
Well, we have some new vegetarian rolls, and what we do to sort of stay true to the pepperoni roll is stay within vegetables that have been cured, or not cured, but preserved. So in the same way that the pepperoni is in the pepperoni roll because it had to come, you know, on a train into the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, and it had to keep for forever because there was no refrigeration, and it had to go to the, you know, into the coal mine, and it had to be very shelf stable. So kind of following that same, you know, bread trail, in that you only use products that have been preserved or pickled. We use Oliverio peppers in our vegan roll, and Oliverio's is a huge company in West Virginia. It's a very important company and an important name. So we use their peppers. And then we name them, you know, things that revolve around our homes and represent people that are important to us.
Are there, I mean, are you thinking about expanding into other areas, or, I mean,
I mean,
I see the
yes.
smile on your face there. I mean, you look pretty happy about that question.
As a businesswoman, that's always, you know, it's a regenerative business cycle, so I hope it continues to go and grow. Yes.
Well, I think of Permane Brothers started not too far from where you're at. Just
Oh.
right down the road there, and look at them. That's a chain. So, yeah, I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Sometimes I think about, you know, some people say, well, why don't you have this business in Elkins? Why don't you have this business in West Virginia? Well, when I started this project, I couldn't have, you know, the community couldn't have supported it. And now I think, well, maybe I could do it there. Or maybe it's my mindset that has changed. I don't know. But I do sometimes think about moving, or at least opening another location where I'm from in West Virginia to kind of really solidify that bridge.
I know you were saying when it comes to the pepperoni rolls, you try to stick with like the preserved and things like that, because that was, you know, really how it was done from the beginning due to restrictions, and just technology didn't exist the way it does today. So correct me if I'm wrong here. I mean, it seems like there is an inherent like creative cap to an extent, just because you want to remain within those walls, right? Which I think is absolutely amazing. But is there a creation, like a pepperoni roll creation, that if you didn't have those restrictions, or maybe even with, and I don't mean restrictions as a negative, you know, connotation or anything like that, but is there, like, if you didn't have that particular mind frame, is there a pepperoni roll concept you would just like love to roll out that had no framework to it? Like a crazy idea?
People talk about having a buffalo chicken pepperoni roll a lot. That comes up a lot. And I think that's a great idea, but I don't know that we would ever do anything like that. It's crazy things for me. Well, we're really working hard on getting a vegan pepperoni in here, but it's very hard. What makes the pepperoni roll so good is the oil in the pepperoni. No other salami really works as well as pepperoni because it's so oily, and the oil that goes into the dough, that's where the talent is. It is the best part. So with the vegan options, it's a little bit tougher. If I could, I would have a vegetarian vegan roll, you know, if there were no restrictions, no limits. That's where, yeah.
I think Angelo was trying to come up with an idea so you'd name a pepperoni roll after him on the menu there. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I just wanted to jump in there.
Well, I don't know, Angelo. There's one that's sort of and it's Italian, right? Maybe we do have an Italian focus because a lot of the Italian the miners were Italian immigrants.
Hey, there we go. I mean, I totally resonated just immediately with it. But what's really unique is, I mean, look, me having some Italian roots, I hear pepperoni roll and it gives me a certain kind of like feeling. And it's so unique how there's so much more history behind it that like I just never really knew of, and how it can be a staple to a community like so many other foods have. And one thing that comes to mind, I actually tell this to my classes that I teach, is when we talk about like diversity and culture and things like that, is Andrew Zimmern, who I don't know if you guys know him. He's on like one of those Food Network TV shows. He has Bizarre Foods or something. His initial intro, it used to say, I don't know if it still does, is if you want to get to know a culture, eat their food. And that's just like what screams to me about your mission and goal and your website and your product. I feel like there is just so much culture in it, and that you just exemplify that notion that Andrew Zimmern put out there.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to respond to. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think what there's a lot of culture. And Andrew, is it Zimmerman or Zimmer? Zimmer?
I think it's the latter. Zimmer, maybe? I don't know.
Zimmer. He goes to a lot of other places besides America and talks about the culture of, you know, getting to know the culture of the country or the culture of the region through the food. And, you know, I think a lot of people talk about, well, what is American culture? What is inherently American food? And to get a little closer to Appalachian culture, I think is not a deviation from anywhere we already are, and is in many ways like a piece of true American culture that connects really all of us.
And I did double check. It's Zimmern. Zimmern. Just so we know.
Zimmern.
Accuracy here.
So, Katt, have you ever thought about, I mean, it sounds like these stories are exciting and so forth. And I mean, I'm hoping, I'm sure there'll be a book on the horizon, another book. But have you ever thought about doing something in the realm that we're here doing, podcast? Did you ever think about starting a podcast that is around your business and bringing those individuals to tell their story live? And I mean, again, I'm just asking, have you ever thought about that?
Yes, we've thought about it. It is a good idea. I mean, I love the idea, but we want to. I think the hesitation was to flood the Appalachian discussion with our narrative, and to just stay kind of in our own little box. Although, you know, I hate to be boxed in, but just to kind of stay here. And in the meantime, there are other podcasts that have popped up. You know, there's Appalachia, Black in Appalachia. There's some others, but these two, Black in Appalachia and Appalachia, they exist and they're wonderful. And instead of us consuming the conversation, now we have partners and we work with them and we get to do things together, and they're in other places of the region. So it's nice to connect and do what we're doing in our weird way.
No, and it's not weird at all, because again, as you said, you're kind of staying in your lane in a way, but at the same time, you're still being really creative, and that offers the opportunity to collaborate and have an even deeper, richer experience, because you can come together, which is the essence of what, you know, a lot of food does. It brings people together. All right. So absolutely. So one question that I did have is, you know, what advice can you give to, again, women, you know, who are, say, for example, in schools of business or just in going through college now, that want to start their own business, but might be a little nervous or just need a little bit of push? What advice can you give to them in terms of their own journeys?
You know, I'm not sure. Someone asked me to share advice for women in business, you know, right now. And I don't know, because it's a crazy economy right now. You know, my advice is be careful. When I started my business, my parents had a lot of reservation, and I was like, whatever, I'm going for it. And now I'm in it, and I understand why there was that reservation. And it is very, you know, my new advice is be so careful, you know, dot those I's and cross those T's. It has been, I would caution anyone wanting to go into business, I would caution them to really think through every aspect of their model. And one piece of the puzzle that has helped us is that we have sort of a diverse model for generating revenue, in that we have our wholesale, we have our fundraisers, and now we have retail. So because we have all of those pieces, when, you know, our wholesale accounts kind of dropped off because the businesses closed, we were able to lift ourselves up through other ways. But I would caution people first and foremost right now. I really would. It has been very, very scary. It has been very hard. But having community has been kind of where we've found comfort and where we've made it through the hurdles. Before the economic crisis, I would tell women to follow their dream and to just be weird and be successful in the ways that they find success. If you know, I think I always used to say, just like, do whatever you want. If there is an aspect of business that doesn't work for you, don't do it. Do what works for you. You know, business was not created by women. It doesn't represent it doesn't represent our best interest, and it doesn't really represent accessibility for women in the way that it was navigated in its construction. So I think one way that helps women is the small business, where, like Etsy, you know, a lot of women have found the ability to get into business because they don't have to work 9 to 5 at a business. They can work when they want to work and what works for them. And if you can get the work done at 2 a.m, do that. That's okay. It's okay as long as you can find success in the ways that really work for you. I think that's okay. But I tell everyone to be really careful right now. Be careful.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, that's good advice, simply because, you know, given everything that's happening in the market right now, you know, it's before, as an entrepreneur, like you said, there's always challenges, right? And now it's just almost, you know, in addition to those challenges, you got to figure out, okay, what can I do to survive the market, even if it is another 6 to 10 months, right? That's a significant amount of time and resources you got to invest into your company to keep it going, keep it developing. And like you said, it's just that a little bit more challenging right now. So, which is why we're all hoping that, again, you know, in the near future, we're able to kind of get back to some new normal, whatever that may be. But I think in terms of, you know, the way that you've grown your company, I mean, as I said, it appears to be very thoughtful, very strategic. As you said, you started with the wholesale, you know, the fundraisers, which is another really big piece. I know we've tried to spread the word for you in a couple of school districts. I know Dennis's wife has also, you know, jumped into some of the fundraising opportunities as well. And those programs are amazing, just in and of themselves, because I know the money that you give back to the school districts, the percentage of those sales is a lot higher than you normally would, which is, again, I mean, completely tremendous. And I know you also mentioned with the book, you know, some of the proceeds going back to the contributors as well. You know, it's sustaining that business model, which is really amazing to us. So how can people stay in contact with you, find your company, and really keep following on your journey? How can we stay in contact or find you?
Well, you can go to the website, rollingpepperoni.com. You can participate in the discussion. We've talked a lot about the discussion around what is Appalachia. You can participate. You put in your story. We also have a story cohort kind of convening for 2021. And not only do you share your story, but you discuss with other members of the community that are participating, and you kind of hone in your story and how you want to share it. So that's cool. And then, of course, you can come to the shop. You know, we're open 9 to 7 every day. And it has been wonderful to be able to just chit chat with people. You know, on the front of the building, we have painted Story Spot and Appalachia. And it's just a calling card for people to pop in and ask questions and talk. And that's wonderful. So we're always available to hang out and talk.
Awesome. And we'll for sure put those, you know, that website and your Instagram account and all links to all of those important sites, definitely in the show notes as we send things out there. So Dennis, any final questions or thoughts from your perspective?
You know, I don't really have any final questions, but I have some final thoughts. And I got to tell you, Katt, it's really refreshing to meet somebody who's in business, or a young individual, a young woman who is inspiring other women to, again, get into business. But I got to say, the one thing that really, really stuck out to me is that as a business professor, as somebody who has been around businesses for decades, I got a gray beard, decades. I always hear profit, profit, profit. I'm getting into business to make money, blah, 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 blah. Your business model is so refreshing. And I got to say that I want to encourage you to keep moving forward with the business model you're using, because I think it works. And I think it's going to be the future, because people, I'll spend more money to drive to your place than to go down the street if I know that your type of business model is going to be doing what it's doing, reaching out to community, sending a message, and so many other things. But I mean, I'm looking for the word selflessness, unselfishness. Help me out, Patrick. You're my dictionary. Again, it's just so refreshing to hear somebody that has such a passion for such a business. And it's not all about the profit, but it's about touching other people. I'm just so, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind. I think it is about profit too, though. And that's what's cool, is that it is profitable to do good work. It is not a sink. There's so much to be gained. It works. That's the best part.
Yeah, and
Angelo.
on that, just final thought there. There's so much to take away from this. I really like some of the things you said about the first person like creates a business is the crazy one. The second one's like the most important, right? Like, I mean, that really resonates. I've taken on some business endeavors as well, and that just kind of like, yeah, I hear that. I also loved when you mentioned that the number one word that was used to describe the Appalachian people is the word people, right? Like that, or they use the word people the most in their stories. My apologies. Which to me, I think that's what's going to carry with me the most. I mean, you talk about some of their stories, if not a lot of them being sad, but still there was a sense of hope to better themselves and the people around them. And that's just so inspirational. And I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. And I'm looking forward to coming down to the shop too.
Thanks. It'd be wonderful to meet you.
Yeah, I'll take full responsibility for not bringing Dennis and Angelo when I snuck in for some pepperoni rolls yesterday. So they're making me feel guilty about that. So I owe a trip for those guys to come check out your store and buy some rolls and have a cool conversation, which, again, we're so super thankful for you to making the time to come join us today, Katt. I personally, like I said, we've kind of watched, kind of on the sidelines, your journey for the last few years, both while you were in school and kind of launching this. And again, it's just been an amazing thing to see that's come to fruition. And, you've stuck to your business model. Like I said, you've wanted to impact the community and really share and illuminate those stories, and you're doing it. And it's really incredible to see. And we look forward to continuing to see where your journey takes you and staying in touch. And again, we are there available anytime if you need taste testers for any of your pepperoni rolls. We are always happy to do that if you need an audience.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And I'll share with the class that actually it was Patrick's class that inspired me to have such a socially conscious model. So if any hats are to be shared on the back, please give yourself one. Because
we're not going to be able to live with him now. Can't believe you did that. Okay.
I'm sorry. Well, at least we're all separate.
No, it's incredibly humbling to hear that. I mean, it's awesome. Like I said, I mean, it's incredible to see people, even if it's such a small participant, small little element, that we were able to encourage or provide something to this journey. But again, the fact that you had the idea inside of you and the vision and you're chasing it, Yeah, that's awesome. And
You know, I got to add this. I just got to jump in there. Katt, that's the reason why we teach. I got to tell you, it's the success stories. It's the finding out where our students have gone. I've been a professor for many years as well as, Patrick. And when I hear the success stories of my students, you wouldn't believe what that does for us. So I might have been joking, but I can tell you right now, you saying that does a lot for Patrick. And it does a lot for me because I know that again, we want to see all of our students succeed. We want to see them to just go out there and take on the whole world and do well.
Sure. Well, thank you. We're all in a great debt of gratitude to our teachers.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to have you in class, but oh well.
Oh, well.
All right. Well, thank you, Katt. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you, Angelo. And to our listeners, check out rollingpepperoni.com. Again, I can personally attest to the fact that they are super delicious. I think this is my fourth one this morning. I did not give any to my kids. So we will have to return to buy some more. I know I'm such a bad parent. But again, today's story is, again, there's a lot of themes in there, from following your passions and your visions, having the courage to do so. And again, exploring cultures and bridging these communities, because again, at the end of the day, it's the human experience that really bonds all of us. And that's why we're here, to share and tell those stories. And it's even better sharing those stories through food. And that's exactly what Katt and Rolling Pepperoni is doing. So we at the show thank Katt, and we will get all of her information out on the show notes. And we look forward to seeing you on a future episode. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.